Welcome to What Did He Say? I'm Hugo, publisher of the Latino News Network. What Did He Say is a podcast by LNN where my lifelong friend Fernando Barboto and I chat about what the 47th President of the United States, Donald Trump, had to say about a number of topics. Fernando is an award-winning Division I soccer coach, born and raised in northern New Jersey, where he lives with his family and is a registered Republican. I'm a 30-plus year journalism veteran who also grew up in northern New Jersey, but has lived in South Florida, the New York City metropolitan area, Connecticut, and for the last 5 years, Chicago, Illinois with my family. I am an independent voter. Both Fernando and I have voted Republican and Democrat in the past, but he's voted for Donald Trump 3 times, and I never have. Today we're going to cover 3 topics: President Trump's second inauguration, the dozens of executive orders he signed, and the January 6th Capitol protest pardons. Fernando, what were your thoughts about the inauguration?
I thought that it was just a very beautiful thing. I thought there was a lot of great energy. I think it was this whole revival. I think of USA and the pride of USA, and I know that President Trump has always talked about MAGA, making America great again. But I felt like it was really genuine on the day. I think a lot of people believe that the future is very bright in the next couple of years, and I think we're all excited. I think there's always going to be a little bit of division. There's always going to be people who disagree and agree, but I think it's definitely a positive day. I think for the United States to get hold of the country and have really strong leadership that I don't think we've had in the last couple of years.
Look, common themes that I've heard from folks that witnessed the inauguration, they talked about unity and being inspired. And I do think the speech that the president gave during the inauguration really kind of fit the mold of uniting the country and working collaboratively. So he goes through the whole ceremony of the inauguration. Like I said, pretty good speech. And then he meets with his with supporters, and what was disappointing is it was like just back to being Donald Trump. And one of the first things that he talks about was the 2020 election being rigged and it being a hoax, and that doesn't inspire me to really think like, okay, well, maybe this time around it's going to be different than the first time around. And he's had 4 years to think about his first 4 years. But I have to disagree with you when you say like strong leadership. Maybe that'll be we have yet to see that. But as far as like unifying the country, and I get it, he won the electoral vote. He won the popular vote. This is still a very divided country. And I really would have wished that he just would have stuck to what I'm hoping wasn't just a script during his inauguration speech, but really perhaps an agenda for the next 4 years. I don't know. I'm pretty skeptical about that.
Yeah, listen, I think I think right after that night, he's sitting there signing executive orders on TV, while taking questions from people. Then all day today, he's on TV. He's been on TV, accessible to the people, to the reporters, to all the journalists. He doesn't shy away. He asks all the questions asked of him while he's signing executive orders. I mean, that's a lot of stuff.
So he signed a lot of executive orders. I mean, more than 200, I believe. One of the executive orders that I wanted to talk about was around immigration. No disagreement. Immigration in this country is fractured. It's broken. But I do think that, like for example, declaring an emergency at the border, sending the U.S. troops to the border. We all know that U.S. Border Patrol is understaffed, and so the military going to the border, I don't see it as a pending invasion of Mexico. I see it as they're going to be helping the work that the U.S. Border Patrol does every single day, and in doing so, will help a lot of people because of just the incredible number of asylum seekers and other immigrants coming to the United States to the border. But I also think a lot of in regards to immigration and signing executive orders is very, performance driven, and not really, again, it's a band-aid to a larger problem. The problem with immigration isn't just about what's happening in the southern border. It's really years, and it's not just him, and it's not just Republican presidents. It's Democratic presidents as well. Years, decades, and decades, my whole life of an immigration system that's broken, and people that are really trying to come to the United States legally, and many of who are here undocumented came here legally, but because of bureaucracy, because of just the system being so broken, they end up being in the United States undocumented. So look, I think yes, some of the executive orders were necessary to kind of pump the brakes right now on immigration. But if you really want to fix immigration, really go to the root causes of the problem of immigration in the United States, and not just talk about building more wall, stopping, invaders coming into the United States, et cetera, et cetera. Like start doing the real work of changing policy and laws to make it easier for someone to legally come to the United States. What are your thoughts?
Listen, I agree 100% with that. I think it's a band-aid, but I think what it is you have to stop the bleeding, right? And the amount of millions and millions of illegal aliens that have come into this country is just enormous. And most of them, a lot of big percentage are criminals, and the ones that in the last 2 days that Mr. Bosman is going after and has arrested, or I think almost 500 already, are most of them gang members with a rap sheet of crime. So I think you have to secure a border, just like Egypt secures their border from Gaza, and every country has to have borders. Um, I think you have to start there. Do I think immigration, policy has to change? I agree it does, and I hope that we can all address it or put pressure on Trump to say, hey, all right, we secured the borders, all right, we stopped the bleeding, but now comes policy change, so that we can allow more immigrants to come to this country who are good people, who are hardworking people, who want to assimilate to American values, and be American. So I think for sure you're spot on with that. But I think there's another executive order that really is dear to my heart, and that's the way that Trump designated cartels as terrorists. Like that to me is huge. Like we need to destroy all the cartels. We need to send our Navy SEALs or whoever, our Green Beret or Special Forces, into these countries and just destroy these cartels, because nobody else wants to do it. Nobody has the courage to do it. Everybody says talk, 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 and nobody does it. And the fact that he was able to designate them a terrorist organization, which no president, all presidents in the past have talked about it, but never really done it. He's done it now. And I think, we have to stop that's a disgrace. These cartels can come in here and just kill our children, kill our American people by the hundreds and thousands with the fentanyl drug, addiction that spread out throughout the whole country. It's really sad that so many young kids are dying.
Well, look, I agree, right? I think, for example, enforce the laws, right? If there's someone here undocumented, then enforce the laws and deport persons. If someone is here um, illegally and they commit a felony, and you mentioned um, murder of a young woman, absolutely. I'm all for enforcing the laws. I think it's just going to be very difficult to. How do you? I mean, it's going to take a lot to determine which are the undocumented immigrants that are, as you mentioned, part of the cartel, um, bringing violence and drugs into our streets versus the other undocumented immigrants that are coming here, are part of the fabric of many communities, especially in the agricultural industry, and are working. And we need an immigrant workforce. The other thing is, again, you mentioned send in the Navy SEALs and Special Forces, and I'm not going to get into a whole discussion about um, the legality of invading another country in any situation. But I also think, in regards to the drug cartels, and I'm not saying that there needs to be more needs to be done, both from the United States and Mexico, in eliminating um, organized crime, the cartels, but it's also about supply and demand, right? Where are they selling these drugs? They're selling them in the United States. And why are they selling it in the United States? Because people are buying them. So part of the drug problem in the United States is absolutely the Mexican drug cartels. But part of the drug problem in the United States is also in the United States. And so it's easy to blame our neighbors to the south. It's easy to just blame the drug cartels. And I'm not saying that that's not right, but there's a demand for those drugs, and there's that part of that responsibility needs to be weighed on the U.S. government. And what are you doing about that? All right, so the last topic is among a lot of the executive orders was the pardons for protesters. I mean, all of the protesters of the January 6th protest, and some believe, and including myself, an attack on the Capitol. Um, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, listen, I think that what he did is right, to pardon those people. I think most of them have been in jail for the last 4 years, and some of them were just jailed just by standing there. Some were jailed for breaking a window, but for 4 years, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think there's a lot. There's so much to dive into with these pardons and these people and what happened on that day. I can only say, I two major things. Number one is I wholeheartedly am against any violence towards law enforcement. Right, I'm a big believer in law enforcement, and I'm proud of the work that they do in our country. But the bigger fear of mine is that there's something a little bit deeper and going on where a DOJ is kind of doing some shady things. Like our government, the deep state, I believe, is doing some things that I just don't agree with. When it comes to, who was the pipe bomber? We don't know anything about the DNC and RNC pipe bombers that planted pipe bombs. We don't know anything about that. And why is that? Why was all that stuff destroyed by the J6 committee, and all of a sudden Biden at the last hour pardons the J6 committee? There's a lot to wrap our heads around. So much that I think you and I could spend an hour talking about. But I just listen. I'm going to disagree with things that Trump does, but this is not one of them.
Well, look, I I'm oversimplifying it, but I understand, right? There are the January 6th protesters that walked in, right? They were following a crowd into the Capitol and they walked in. Is that the same as the protester that actually destroyed government property to get in? Is that the same as the protester that there's video were attacking Capitol police officers? No. So I get that. But I do think that in the same fashion, I think it was a photo op. He signs away, um, he pardons everyone as if they're equal, and they're not, as opposed to saying, I absolutely believe that some of the January 6th protesters have been treated unfairly by the Biden administration, by the Justice Department, and I'm going to work with my team to ensure that justice is given out fairly, but to just kind of almost like a blank check and literally people who who attack police officers just kind of not go through the process of appeals and maybe they've served part of their sentence. I don't first of all, I don't think that's fair. It sends a wrong message. And second of all, again, going back to the inauguration, if you're talking about working together, if you're talking about bringing the country together, a lot of those executive orders speak exactly the opposite of what he's saying. So again, I'm with you. I don't think somebody who followed the mob in should be tried equally as someone who attacked a police officer, but an executive order that just completely gives a hall pass to everyone is not right either.
Yeah, I mean, I know that the ones that did attack the police officers. I mean, they've been in jail for 4 years, and they're first offenders. Like how long do you stay in jail for? Punching a cop. You don't stay in jail for 4 years. Not on the first offense. So I agree with you got a great point there. Should he have gone case by case? I think Pam Bionde made that argument. When she was doing her hearing to take her position, she said that I would go through case by case. Did Donald Trump pull the trigger? Maybe too quickly, maybe. But I don't think that he's letting go of hardcore criminals, or pardoning hardcore criminals or some people. Like I just don't think he's doing that. I think he's just trying to make a really bad situation that these people were put in and put themselves in, and just clearing the slate. And that's maybe not the right thing to do, but I think that's probably what his intent was.
All right. This has been What Did He Say? Fernando Barboto, Hugo Balta. Thank you very much for spending this time with us. Send us your comments. We absolutely want to hear it. We got a lot of good comments from the first conversation that we had. More of them were in favor with Fernando, so that's okay. That's okay. So hopefully I'll get a little bit of love. But again, this is a podcast to have conversations and a little bit of debate. Like I mentioned, Fernando and I have been lifelong friends, best friends, and while we disagree on certain things, we absolutely agree in that we want what's best for our country. We just might have different disagreements on how to get there, and we certainly have a lot in common in regards to our upbringing, our family, etc. And I think the more we talk and the more we understand each other, I think the better all of us can be in regards to moving forward in the next 4 years. I hate to hear people who say, I don't talk to my friend anymore or a family member because, Donald Trump was elected. And I get it. I don't want to be disrespectful. People feel very passionate about specific issues. So I'm not knocking it, but I'm a believer that, you gotta try to engage in conversation and in debate, respectful debate, because otherwise, we're just kind of falling into our own echo chambers, and we're not learning anything from one another.
100%. I agree with you. I think the most important thing is that we can agree to disagree, and as long as the number one thing I think that you and I both believe, Hugo, is that we want to improve our country, make it, whether it's great again or it's great, and make it better, fine. But then also make sure it's in a good place for our children. Like that's big for me.
That's right. See you next time on What Did He Say? A podcast by the Latino News Network. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.